For most of us, our first, and sometimes only, taste of racing comes on the streets. If you love cars, this is where it all starts. In the empty parking areas, and on the city streets where you race your mates between stoplights. We do this in the very first cars we owned, or the ones we saved up for later. Then we fiddled with the engines and the suspension until they went faster, and added stripes and stickers so they looked faster too. It's the same around the world, whether it's on Japanese mountain roads, on Britain's back lanes, or America's superhighways. We're talking about affordable heroes, cars that bring performance to the people. Whether they're smoking around a parking lot or hammering along a city circuit you designed yourself. They aren't the most expensive, and they won't win every drag race, but they all prove one thing. You don't need $1 million to have a car with a big heart.
You are now entered in the Challenger Series. Each circuit in this series will challenge different aspects of your car and your skill as a driver. Next, take on club-level circuits, perfect for amateur drivers to learn the ropes of efficient car control. Now, tour the most famous racetracks in the United States from coast to coast, representing the best racing in the country.
Two doors on a small car. Lightweight, hokey, skinny-tired, rear-wheel drive, and affordable. Sounds simple, doesn't it? Yet it takes guts for a manufacturer to produce cars like these. Cars that take the demands of practical motoring and place them on a non-existent back seat. Because really, they're made for one thing: driving, even if you have nowhere to go.
Based on that most useful of car layouts, the hatchback, these cars are all about power, performance, and, of course, practicality. Hot hatches are cars you can drive every day and in every way. Small and responsive, they're perfect for bombing around tight roads, and when you're done with that, you can use them for shopping trips and other boring things that get in the way of proper driving. These are cars that pack big performance into a compact space, and they come from all over the world. Often they're the fastest versions of a particular model, and they squeeze every last drop of power from mass production engines. They also have more aggressive suspension to make them corner better, plus chunky body kits to help them fight the air and stand out from the others.
Japan, home of the noble art of drifting. Made famous by cult movies, manga comics, and console games, all of which celebrated the street racers who baited cops with midnight runs through big cities before escaping to twisty mountain roads in their homegrown coupes, slithering to freedom in clouds of tire smoke. If you recognize the cars in this group, it's because you've seen them on TV, flying through icy forests or clinging to a cliff in some far-flung corner of the world. Based on competition rally cars, or at least inspired by them, they have four-wheel drive, big turbochargers, and wings more suited to light aircraft. You feel like you could drive them anywhere, and that no matter how ambitiously you enter a corner, everything will be okay. Probably.
The 60s and 70s were all about experimentation, and the cars were no different. Instead of relying on big V8s for performance, some manufacturers extracted as much power as possible from smaller engines and concentrated on making their cars fun, light, and good-looking. So these were things you could really throw around, which meant they inevitably found their way onto the track, paving the way for touring car racing as we know it today.
Whether it's a sports sedan for business people, an SUV that has way more power than you need for the school run, or a lightweight, purpose-built track day car, you'll find it here. Every car in this eclectic group represents the very best of its breed, at the very top of the tree. Some of these are pumped-up versions of everyday cars, bursting with power and often bulging at the seams. From classic 60s muscle to more modern sports cars, each car here truly represents the best driving experiences of their era. And, with the exception of the more extreme track toys, they show how far you can push a daily driver without sacrificing the comfy seats, soundproofing, and room for the whole family.
Here, you'll take on the thrill and challenge of racing at night. Visibility is limited, and cooler temperatures affect how tires grip the track. The circuits in this series present a variety of challenges to even the most experienced driver. Tight wheel-to-wheel turns, blind crests, bumpy tarmac, and wide-open top-speed straights. These tracks have it all. European tracks are some of the oldest in the world, some carrying the traditions of racing for nearly a century. This next series highlights the best of these legendary circuits.
These are the sort of machines that, in the old days, would have emerged from secret skunk works. Cars made by special departments and in-house tuners with motorsport expertise and a stash of weapons-grade parts. All of these machines push the limits of the models on which they're based, which means that for most companies, these are the fastest cars they make, full stop. Underneath the tinted shades and smart suits, these executive heavyweights pack serious firepower. They might be large and luxurious, but they carry their weight well, thanks to magic suspension and electronic trickery that gets them around corners like cars weighing half as much. All this while boasting the sumptuous stuff a business person needs, including interiors made mostly of tree and cow. They might have the ability to drive through pig's muck, but these SUVs are made by people who usually do sports cars, so they're more suited to apexes than agriculture. Like carving a sledgehammer into a machete, you wouldn't mess with the results. Though they do make these power-crazed juggernauts rather entertaining to drive on a track, especially if you leave your braking to the last minute. If the 80s was a revolutionary time for the car world, the 90s and noughties were just as good. New materials and technologies meant manufacturers could build cars with stuff we'd only ever seen in motorsport. Flappy paddle gearboxes, twin-scroll turbochargers, lightweight composites. They shook up the racing world too and set the standard for sports cars as we know them today. These cars are future classics, but you can buy them now while they're still shiny. They have license plates and you can drive them on the road, but make no mistake, these are hardcore grade A track day weapons, and anything to make them road legal is of trivial concern. More importantly, they weigh about the same as a paper bag and have excellent power to weight figures. This means they accelerate like superbikes, and it's hard to imagine them losing to anything costing under 6 figures. It began with the bootleggers, who tuned their cars to try and outrun the cops. Their recipe was simple. They inserted a big engine in a small production car and put power above all else. Their creations were the ancestors of the American auto industry, and later inspired the pony cars we fell in love with.
These are the poster cars. The ones you had on your bedroom wall as a kid. Who knows, you might still have them on your wall. Because even if you're old enough to buy proper art in frames, it'll never look as good as the cars we have here. They're the ones we all dream of. The ones built in exotic places with top speeds and acceleration times that can literally take your breath away. Many of these cars are built with space-grade materials and push road car physics to the limits using race-derived technology. But even if you become immensely rich, you might still need to know the right people in the right places to be allowed to buy one. Others suit a more down-to-earth budget. But they all have a huge amount of power, and many will go way beyond 200 miles per hour.
Some of the very first auto races drove through fields, forests, and hilly countryside. The circuits in this series began as dirt roads and trails, evolving into exciting tracks with state-of-the-art race engineering. Significant elevation changes test a car's acceleration and braking, while hills and valleys limit visibility. The next series features oscillating circuits that test both car and driver. Built to the highest standards of professional racing, these tracks exist for top-level racing competition. Every corner is engineered, and safety technologies like runoffs, tire walls, and high-tech barriers are integral to their design.
Meet the Supercar Killers. The cars that can hold their own against the world's most exotic machinery without sending your bank manager into cardiac arrest. With astonishing acceleration and enough grip to peel tarmac, they offer serious bang for your buck. And you might even see one in the real world, not just in music videos. Fast, famous, rare, and expensive. These are the exotic GTs, the cars we gather around at motor shows, the ones with prancing horses and fighting bulls on their badges, machines with sharp edges and screaming engines that make you tingle. When these names are bounded around, the word supercar isn't far behind. If modern hypercars walk the rules of physics with space-grade technology, then early supercars did it with brute force. There were no fluffy bits in sight, no ABS, no traction control, and nowhere to hide when things got a bit crashy, which they often did. Fueled by the 80s banking boom and power-crazed brokers, these machines were raw, exhilarating, and astonishingly fast, even by today's standards. With their big V12s and room for designer luggage, the cars in this group will cross whole countries without even noticing. Then, when you arrive in Monaco, you can do a lap of the Grand Prix track before parking outside a posh hotel with all the other billionaires. This is what Grand Tourers are for, after all. They operate on the bleeding edge of physical possibility. Some are made in batches so small and at such dizzying expense that you have to be invited to buy one. Many combine batteries with petrol to make more power and use materials you'd usually find on a spaceship. All of which has led to a new ground-based space race and unfathomable top speeds. These aren't just the fastest cars of their time, they're the fastest cars ever. For speed junkies born before base jumping and energy drinks were invented, motorsport was one of the only ways to get their fix. Many were combat veterans from World War II, the top guns of their era, who sought new ways to batter the enemy. And so they raced monstrously powerful lightweight contraptions with no seatbelts, which were probably more terrifying than the fighter planes they flew in the war.
Even for the most natural-born racing drivers, it takes years of training and mental conditioning to master cars like these. They say the first car race happened as soon as the world's second car was built, and motorsport has been evolving ever since. From the historic sports car races of the 50s to the modern cutting-edge technology of the Formula E racing series. Many resemble cars you see on the roads, though they are merely lookalikes and are very different beasts to their road-going counterparts. But they do look a bit similar, and that's important because, to borrow a phrase from NASCAR, if you win on Sunday, you sell on Monday. These fire-breathing race cars compete in events across the world, where close-quarters racing often becomes a full contact sport on the road to victory.
been called the great equalizer. Reduced visibility, scarce traction, and hydroplaning means driving quickly becomes more about feeling the road rather than pure power. The following series takes place on tracks known for their wet weather racing. This next series is all about speed. Acceleration is one thing, but keeping your momentum through sweeping corners is key, especially leading into the massive straights these tracks provide. Concentration and quick reflexes make all the difference between hitting top speed or hitting a wall. The southern United States is perfect for sports car racing. Temperate weather, scenic views, and plenty of space to put a track down anywhere you like. This next series takes place at venues featuring America's premier circuits.
Whereas the historic races in the other group started with a clean sheet, the cars in this group follow much stricter rules. They might have started life as a fast road car, but from the wheels up, almost everything has been modified, so long as it stays within the law. Some companies will sell you one off the shelf and even organise a special championship so you can race against other identical cars. The level playing field means it all comes down to driver skill. Big, loud, basic and Australian. V8 Supercars are loosely based on four-door sedans and they only race down under, which makes them as unique as Aussie rules football or kangaroos. Mostly it's a straight choice between Ford or Holden, otherwise known as GM. But any manufacturer with a V8 engine can enter the ring, ready for a good old-fashioned bashing. 1970s touring cars were beefed up and ready for a scrap, as were the drivers. The rules and regulations were interpreted in deeply creative ways, leading to flared fenders and swollen bodywork to make room for bulging engines that sent power through the roof. Not literally. As if that wasn't enough, wings and things were added to give these cars more aero than an F-15 fighter jet. If racing is supposed to be a non-contact sport, then nobody told these guys, because if you don't finish a touring car race with battle scars and a missing mirror, you're doing it wrong. They might look similar to everyday cars, but the shape is pretty much the only thing they have in common. Inside, they're stripped to the metal. The bodywork is replaced by beefy new panels, and unlike your mother's car, they spit flames from their exhausts. In the olden days, motorsport was something you could smell a mile off. You had scorched rubber and petrol fumes and many fluids, some of them from the drivers. But this is the future, and this is a Formula E car, a completely electric space-grade single-seater with its own race series endorsed by the FIA. In the 1950s, the rules of sports car racing changed, meaning teams could enter cars that for the first time weren't based on road-going equivalents. This meant they could experiment with radical new designs and materials, which opened the door for exotic endurance races that were as beautiful as they were fast, and they became instant classics.
Here we are then, in the ultimate motorsport group. A world of impossible speed, mind-boggling forces, and the sort of hazards usually reserved for test pilots. Back in the 60s and 70s, there was no guarantee that a driver starting a race would still be around when it finished. Cars were high on speed, low on safety, and dripping with adrenaline. Thankfully, things have moved on, but with more safety comes more speed, as designers and engineers bend the rules of physics to save a micron here or a millisecond there. Everything on these machines is there, or rather not there, for a reason. Some are rolling experiments for mankind's most advanced technology, and they stretch the definition of car to its limit. Together they represent billions of dollars of investment, and they compete in the world's most famous and valuable races, from the banked corners of Indianapolis to the Mulsanne Straits at Le Mans.
Each of the following tracks integrates all the special characteristics of the environment in which they exist, from frozen mountains to sunny beaches and everywhere in between. Trot the globe while racing on the world's most unique circuits. This is where racing started. Legends were forged on these famed circuits, known for dangerously high speeds and tricky corners. Get ready to drive through history. These tracks are modern, technical, and unforgiving, requiring the driver to be at the highest levels of proficiency. Modern heroes of motorsport are born here, conquering circuits engineered to push physics to the edge. Prepare yourself for the ultimate test of precision, reflexes, and speed.
Cars like these are mostly to be found at Le Mans and other round-the-clock races where, despite giving 100% for hour after hour, they can't break down or crash. And sometimes that's easier said than done. They're called prototypes because they're not based on anything else, and because they feature cutting-edge technology. Some are even named after robots, like Audi's hybrid R18 e-tron. This is it, the pinnacle of all automotive technology, the fastest, grippiest, most scientifically serious cars on the planet, designed by people with giant brains who take the rules of nature, crumple them up, and write new ones. This is a world where the gap between heroism and humiliation is measured in microseconds, and where phantom forces are fought by drivers with superhuman reactions. 1970s Grand Prix racing was only for the brave. It was a time when technology sometimes overtook man's ability to tame it, a fact that was tragically proven too many times. The 1976 Grand Prix season was dominated by the title fight between James Hunt and Niki Lauda, and the battle almost cost Lauda his life. IndyCar, America's ultimate single-seater championship, in which cars must somehow remain grounded while doing 230 miles per hour on a banked oval. That makes it the world's fastest racing series. So aerodynamics is king, which is why these look unlike any other single-seaters in the world. In fact, every team must use a standard Dallara chassis, but can choose between a Chevrolet or a Honda engine. Can-Am stood for Canadian American because that's where the races happened. There were virtually no rules, so the cars were wild, dangerous, and experimental, often ridiculously so. Wings were everywhere, and some cars even had fans on the bottom to suck them onto the road. Almost all of them were made by the sort of men who, in a parallel universe, would be locked in a laboratory making Frankenstein monsters. It was the era when wings appeared at Grand Prix for the first time, when engines moved to the middle, and when Britannia ruled. The single-seat cars were light, but flimsy, and the margin between risk and reward was often way too close for comfort. But they were fast, as were the heroes who drove them, some of whom paid the ultimate price to help shape Grand Prix racing as we know it today.